Very nice indeed.
Good rehearsal.
I thought she did say, okay, so we have an okay. I'm counting to 10. 2, 3.
Yes. Here an okay yet by Julia.
Somebody tell me when I can go ahead.
You can go.
Welcome to the International Conference on Artificial Intelligence and Law, ICAL 2021. Hello, world. I'm Adam Weiner, the program chair for ICAL 2021. I have the honor to make a few remarks about the conference by way of opening. ICAL is a biennial conference held under the auspices of the International Association of Artificial Intelligence and Law, the IAAIL. For over 35 years, ICAL has provided a platform to present and discuss research and applications about AI and law, as well as to stimulate interdisciplinary and international collaboration amongst researchers. Due to the pandemic, and for the first time, ICAL is being held online and cost-free. We have over 1,500 registrants from 65 countries, which shatters all previous attendance records for ICAL. We're thrilled by your participation, which reflects the enormous and growing interest in AI and law. ICAL will continue to be at the forefront of this wave. The conference papers reflect a great diversity of topics, which you'll soon hear about in depth. As it's always done, ICAL strives to maximize the opportunities for researchers to present their work. In addition to the conference, there are 11 collocated workshops that focus on particular areas. Moreover, there's a doctoral consortium helping emerging researchers to engage with the ICAL community. We have 2 distinguished keynote speakers. Professor Stuart Russell, an internationally recognized researcher and AI educator, offers a pre-recorded lecture on provably beneficial AI, which will be discussed by a distinguished panel. Giving us a view from a global law firm, Joe Cohn of Dentons will talk about advances in automation at the firm. Finally, the IAAIL president, Enrico Francesconi, will outline the evolution and the perspectives of AI research in relation to ICAL. Let's take a moment to thank the IAAIL Executive Committee, the conference and workshop organizers, the authors and program committees, and our sponsors. So many have given their time, knowledge, and support over months to collectively realize ICAL 2021. Thank you, each and every one. As you can see from the program, we have a packed week of talks. The presentations also provide unprecedented opportunities for the audience to interact with one another and the speakers through online comments. We hope that you make use of these. We're sure that the talks will give insight, understanding, and inspiration about this fascinating and important topic. We also hope you reconnect with old colleagues and friends, as well as make many new connections. Welcome to ICAL 2021. Welcome to the AI and Law community. I declare the conference open. And now I pass the baton to Juliano Maranhão, the ICAL 2021 conference chair. Thank you very much.
Welcome to all. I'm Juliano Maranhão. I'm the conference chair, and I'm going to conduct this opening session. First, I would like to thank our sponsors, Jus Brasil, Albert Einstein Israeli Hospital, Legal Code, PG Advogados, Urbano Vitalino Advogados, and Opsi Bloom Advogados. It's really an honor to host for the first time the ICAIL conference here in Latin America, and particularly in Brazil. And so without further delay, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Minister Luís Roberto Barroso. Luís Roberto Barroso is full professor at State University of Rio de Janeiro. He holds a Master of Law at the Yale Law School. He was a visiting scholar at Harvard Law School, a fellow of the Institute of Advanced Studies in Berlin, and author of several seminal books on constitutional law. He's presently the minister of the Brazilian Supreme Court. Please, Minister Roberto Barroso, it's an honor to have you here. You have the floor.
The time here. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I would like to greet Adam Weiner and Juliano Maranhão, the chairs of this conference. I am, I should say, no expert in artificial intelligence, although as everyone else, I'm living under it these times. And so this is a subject that interests me. I've written, I was a keynote speaker at the International Society of Public Law a year and a half ago, before the pandemic. And I did study the technological revolution, and we had a chapter on artificial intelligence. So I want to share some ideas here and some experiences involving the Brazilian judiciary. I also greet Professor Fabio Cosman that I see here online and everyone else. So I want to tell this story. It's a long story, but I'll try to be very brief. It's indeed the history of humanity and how we got to this point where artificial intelligence has come to center stage. A quick history recap, I'll call it. It all started about 3.5 billion years ago when the Big Bang occurred and the universe emerged with its fundamental elements: matter, energy, time, and space. Just over 9 billion years later, the solar system was formed. With it came the Earth, when the first signs of organic life date back to 4 billion years. The remotest ancestors of humans supposedly appeared 2.5 million years ago. Our direct ancestor lineage, the Homo sapiens, has its origins traced back to about 70,000 years, meaning that we are children in the universe. As you can see, I really went way back. But one point, which is the first relevant point I would like to make here, is that writing was only invented in the year 3500 before the Common Era. And this is something that has always struck me, and I want to stress here, the emblematic works of the history of humanity, like the Hebrew Bible, the Greek Iliad, the Indian Mahabharata, first Buddhist scriptures were transmitted across generations as oral narratives. And that has always surprised me, that writing is so recent in the history of humanity. And to end this first recap chapter, three great revolutions shaped the history of humanity: the cognitive revolution, the agricultural revolution, and the scientific revolution. And we are now living, as we all know, the scientific revolution, or the digital revolution, which is considered, that's the conventional wisdom these days, which is considered the third industrial revolution. The first one being in the 18th century, that has as its symbol the use of steam as a source of energy. The second one in the 19th century, that has as its symbol electricity. And now this third industrial revolution, the digital revolution, that has as its symbol the world connected through personal computers and the internet. So this is the world we're living in, the world of the technological or digital revolution that has completely changed the way we live, the way we travel, the way we buy books, the way we do a research, the way we listen to music. It's a world that has a set of new words that identify utilities and gadgets that until recently we didn't know the words and we didn't have the utilities, and apparently we would not be able to live without them anymore. And I made a short list here. Google. So for the young generations, it's been possible to live without Googling someone or something. Other new words: WhatsApp, Uber, Dropbox, Skype, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Waze, Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, Netflix, YouTube, and for singles, there's also Tender. So all these words are like a rubber stamp for this new world we are living in. The most valuable companies today are no longer oil companies like Shell and Exxon, or manufacturers of equipment and car makers like General Motors and Ford, or manufacturers of equipments and appliances like General Electric, which were the most valuable companies probably 20 years ago when Fabio, Cosman, and I were still very young. We are still very young, but we are in our third youth now, Fabio, I would say. So it's a totally new world in which the main companies now are Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft. So innovation and innovations in technological advancements, I would say, build this brave new world in which we are living, the world of information technology, biotechnology, nanotechnology, 3D printing, autonomous cars, quantum computing, and the Internet of Things. And by now, we are starting to talk about the fourth industrial revolution as an unfolding of the digital revolution. This fourth revolution is a product of the fusion of information technology, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. And then we're getting closer to our main subject here. But there is a lot going on that in some way is redefining what it means to be human. And it's interesting, like algorithm has become probably one of the most important concepts of our time. And of course, it's basic for artificial intelligence, for AI. Of course, all these changes, the third and the fourth revolution that is in sight already, they bring the allures of modern life and promises of longevity and new comforts, but they also come with risks and threats and inconvenience that we should be aware of. Some of them I can list here, which are the risks to privacy. We live under a surveillance society, and many countries are approving laws trying to protect privacy. We are living a world in which the digital revolution, which brought a lot of good things, also brought problems like hate speech in social media and disinformation campaigns that to a certain extent threat democracy as we know it. As you probably know, I am the president of the Superior Electoral Court in Brazil, and one of the main concerns we had last year with the elections was fighting disinformation campaigns and conspiracy theories and hate speech in social media. And we prepared for war, as you probably saw it, and we partially won, I think I can say. But disinformation played a main role in the US elections, in the Brexit process, in elections in India, and it's, of course, a main concern. And there is also, this is the last thing I want to mention here in this long introduction, is genetic engineering, which is a temptation, very hard to avoid because it's a means to fight many diseases that are not still treatable these days. But of course, it also comes with the temptation of creating Superman, creating people that look better, are smarter and stronger, and that could dramatically increase inequality in the world and just create a new oppressive elite. So this is what I would like to say about this wonderful new world we are living in, with all these innovations and technological advances, and some threats and risks we should be aware of. So now I talk a little bit and specifically about artificial intelligence, which I guess most people here know more than I do on that subject. But I would like to start with a short personal story. I was in Yale in New Haven in 1988, 1989, and my wife had a friend whose husband was there at Yale also in 1988 studying artificial intelligence. 1988. I had never heard of it, as you might guess, having lived in Brazil all my life. And I was very impressive by what he was telling me. And to be true, very cynical that we could get anywhere with what he was telling me he was doing. And you must understand that was a world in which most people did not even have a personal computer. 1988 was the first time I saw a personal computer. And at the law school, they had a lab with computers that we could use and write documents that we would retrieve with big floppy disks. Some of you, at least the older ones, might recall what that was. So a personal computer was something not widespread yet, although the law school and the university would fund the buying of it. And I did buy my first IBM PS2 at that time. It didn't catch up and Mac came, but that was what Yale had at that time. And I did buy one. And it was like an investment. So we are talking about a pre-internet time in 1988. And by then, there were people from Israel. The guy was from Israel, studying artificial intelligence. So I was very impressed. And I've paid attention to AI since then. And I wrote a few notes in this recent article that I prepared. And I just want to go through them very quickly during my time before I talk a little bit about the use of AI in the Brazilian judiciary. So my reflection on intelligence, artificial intelligence, which is allowing the transfer of typically human decision-making activities and capabilities to machines that are fed with data, statistics, and information. And I'm a senior fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School, and I went to visit one of the people that really study AI at the MIT. He was he recently passed away, Patrick Winston was his name. And he was telling me that at this point, that was a couple of years ago, machines, as we know, they have no ideas of their own yet and no discernment as to right or wrong. That is to say, artificial intelligence depends still entirely on the human intelligence that feeds it. And that's a point that I always pay attention, because that is a breakthrough that people are seeking. But clearly, as far as I know, AI do not have consciousness and emotions at this point. And I know that there have been important experiences with, playing chess or playing Go, which is a game we don't have here in Brazil, but people that describe the breakthroughs in artificial intelligence like to emphasize how the computer was able to beat the champion in this area. But as we know, artificial intelligence is now all over our ordinary lives. And I'm not talking about, well, I could be talking about Siri, that I don't know if you've seen, but it has interrupted me in court a couple times by one of them saying, I agree with you, which I was very happy to hear. And Alexa that I have here at my home, and that helps me with some basic activities and information. As I mentioned before, a lot of progress is being made with autonomous car, with self-driving cars. I often use for foreign language, Google Translator, and it's amazing how much they have improved the capacities of translation with the artificial intelligence. And 1 minute before I talk about courts, I want to point out the concerns that we all have about artificial intelligence, that of course should not preclude us from moving forward, but of course that we should have in mind. Of course, there is the risk for employment and the difficulty of older people to adjust to new demands in this new economy. Artificial intelligence are used for different purposes in the world, but since it's mostly a product of human information that's fed into machines, we must be aware that we should not reproduce prejudices and discriminations that we find in our society, so that we can move on for better. And there is one last point that struck me when I read Yuval Noah Harari's book, I think Sapiens or probably Homo Deus, when he mentioned that one of these concerns is for liberal democracy, because liberal democracy is founded on free will, on our capacity of deciding what we want to do with our lives and choosing our personal way of living a good life. And he says that we are going to have a problem when the time comes in which the most important decisions of our lives will be taken heteronomously, will be taken by machines and not by ourselves. And he problematized this matter, which I find it a very interesting frontier of philosophical reflection. And lastly, in Brazil, in the past years, I would say 3 years, courts have been investing in artificial intelligence. The first step, which is not very sophisticated, but it was very meaningful, was to create a electronic process, a electronic lawsuit. And the National Council of Justice has this project that the Brazilian judiciary will be 100% digital in the near future. And by the way, at the Supreme Court, almost 100% of all new cases are totally digital. So we're going paperless, or just about, because people like me still like to print at least the most important parts of the process and read them on paper, which is probably a sign that I'm getting old. But this is one important step, digital processes. And one other thing that most courts, we have 27 states, if we include the federal district, most of them have gone digital, and most of them are now using AI for sorting out processes, for sorting out lawsuits. At the Supreme Court, we have this very important project called Victor, which is an AI tool that does a very important job that has simplified our lives. We, as Brazilian lawyers will know, we have a very heavy workload of appeals, which we call extraordinary appeals. Supreme Court receives about 100,000 cases per year. And now, about 90% are extraordinary appeals. We now have this filter called general repercussion. General repercussion is a requisite for the admission of an extraordinary appeal. The party has to prove, the party who is appealing has to prove that his or her case is more important than the interest of the individual parties. It has a social, economic, ethical, political implication. That's the general repercussion. And so when the court decides a case that has a general repercussion, we establish a holding, a thesis that is binding in all other courts. And in some cases, the Supreme Court will say, this matter has not general repercussion. So now with this Victor AI tool, we have a machine that sorts out among the cases that reach the court, which ones have been object of general repercussion and has a thesis to be applied to the case, and we apply it immediately or send the case back. Or we also identify the cases that the court will not take because we consider that that matter is not relevant. And this has simplified incredibly the workload of the justices, because we get rid of quite a lot of cases that should not reach the court. This is all done at the Office of the Chief Justice. They have a team that supervises the AI tool that we use, but this has revolutionized the work at the Supreme Court. And there are similar projects going on at the Superior Court of Justice, and this is also simplifying their lives. We do not have, and I'm coming to the end of my time here, we do not have still, although there are projects of online courts, there have not been experiences of having AI deciding cases, even if under supervision of a judge, a human judge. But I think this is the future. And sometime in the near future, at least the easy cases, at least the repetitive cases will be adjudicated by computers using artificial intelligence under, of course, supervision of a human judge. so that the judge can identify if the case really adjusts to a pattern or it has some singularity that should be noticed. Singularity, I know it's a major word when we discuss artificial intelligence. Probably we want to make sure that now and in the future, we are the ones that control the machines, and of course, not the opposite. So in dealing with AI in courts, oh, I didn't have the time to mention that we have electronic ballot boxes at the electoral court, which is has eliminated frauds in the Brazilian electoral system. So this is it. We want to make sure that we benefit from all the advancements that artificial intelligence can bring and is bringing to us, but keeping it in a track of ethics, respect for fundamental rights, and transparency. I like one short passage by Stephen Hawking that I separated here to end this talk, a quote by Stephen Hawking in which he said, this is the line: "Our future is a race between the growing power of our technology and the wisdom with which we use it. Let's make sure that wisdom wins." Thank you very much for the invitation. It was a pleasure to be here and share some thoughts with you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Minister. It was really an insightful and talk, an inspiring talk, I would say also. Thank you very much, really. And I would like now to introduce Professor Fabio Cosman. Professor Fabio Cosman is professor in the School of Engineering at the University of São Paulo, and he's also the director of the Center of Artificial Intelligence at the University of São Paulo. He's going to give us the landscape of AI in Brazil, and particularly the relationship between the academic environment and the industry in this joint effort to promote and develop artificial intelligence in Brazil. So please, Professor Fabio Cosman, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you, Juliano. Hello to everyone. Hello, Minister Luís Roberto Barroso. It's a pleasure to meet you. So it's very nice to be here and talking to the legal community. This is an important community that is really close to AI at this moment. It brings several challenges to AI. What I will try to say, I will share my screen and share a few thoughts as well. I hope this is, I hope you can see the presentation. So I'll be talking about AI and law in the context of industry session. So I'll try to say a few words about the state of relationship between industry and academia in Brazil and overall. So basically, let me start with a couple of words on this difficult expression, which is AI, right? AI means many things to many people. So it's basically the study of artificial devices that behave intelligently, so it's hard to define. But I think for the public as a whole, it has become a lot more. It has become really the construction of any computer artifact that solves any complex activity at some abstract level. So AI has broadened, has seen its scope broaden in the last few years. And I think it's in this context that I will say a few words connecting industry and academia. Because the industry is now looking at AI to solve many different problems that are related to computers and the solution of a complex document-based challenges. I'll say a few words from this perspective, and also looking at trying to show a bit about Brazil to our international audience. First of all, Brazil is a big country, has a large population. You see it in green in the map. I'm speaking from São Paulo, the big city in the southeast. It's a very diverse city. You can find very different photos of it. So you saw photos in the website of the conference. Here's a different photo. And if you look at some statistics about AI in Brazil, you will find, for example, statistics relating the production of publications. I apologize for the words in Portuguese here, but this is a result of a Brazilian study from the Brazilian government about publication rates. You see that Brazil is up there in 12th position. It's been between 10th and 15th position throughout the years in publications. So research-wise, Brazil is sort of a middle player. Also, you see the same data from a different source. This is from OECD, the Organization of Developed Countries. This is a different graph, of course, but you can see that there is the United States and China competing for the top position, and then a few countries in the middle. You see Brazil here is the orange block. It occupies the 15th position if you look at the volume of publications. Okay, so research-wise, Brazil has been a player. It has a sort of a strong community of researchers looking at AI, working for several decades. Also, this is an interesting study produced by Tsinghua University from China. They actually counted the number of top researchers in each country, and they defined top researcher as a researcher with an H index, a measure of publication productivity, within the 10% of top international researchers. So you can see that with this measure, Brazil actually appears in 8th position with a substantial number of talented, according to this definition, researchers. Actually, this same study also ranked universities, and you see that, surprisingly, I would say, the University of São Paulo appears here in 5th position in the number of talented researchers that they identified in this study. So we do have some strong academic interest in AI. Also, there is now really strong activity in the innovation and industry sector. If you look at let me explain this graph. This is a graph produced by the Brazilian government. The Brazilian government has a program that supports corporations. It pays for projects. It pays for innovation in companies. This project is called Embrapi. You can see in blue the percentage of projects that are related to artificial intelligence. It's the largest block. It's the largest percentage within all projects that they received in the last year. So it got almost 20% of all projects. So almost 20% of all projects submitted to this branch of the Brazilian government are related to artificial intelligence. Actually, let me say a few things about this. I think the private sector is really interested in AI in Brazil. There was a survey conducted by KPMG last year, and I will just quote from the survey. It identified more than 700 startups. It's not equally distributed around the country. More than 50% are in the state of São Paulo. But most of them are related to health, human resources, and 10% are related to agriculture, agribusiness. Actually, a substantial number of startups are related to text processing and chatbots, conversational agents, and many of them are related to law in this regard. So we do have substantial private action happening. This is, I think Brazil has a few advantages in putting together private and putting the private sector interested in AI. Brazil has a large and connected population. The Brazilian population is actually known to be really interested in novel technologies. So we have institutions that generate high quality data in many different ways. And we have a strong legal institutions infrastructure support research and development and innovations. So with many different institutions involved. And recently, the Brazilian government published a national strategy. More than 30 countries have strategies now, so Brazil has one. One thing that is interesting about this strategy is that it emphasizes regulation and ethical use of AI. And this is a direction that I think law and AI can really work together in trying to see which kinds of regulations should be used and enforced, and how to make guarantee that devices have an ethical use and behave ethically. There is also the Brazilian strategy looks at workforce, education, research, many different aspects of AI, and in particular, it looks at ways to emphasize centers, research centers that can work as hubs for innovation and the connection between industry and research. We now have several AI centers in Brazil. Recently, the federal government selected 6 new centers. We had a center already in the state of São Paulo. That's the center I direct. And we have a few centers in Rio de Janeiro and Goiás. Let me just say that we'll have, for example, a roundtable this week with all these centers. So the discussion is really picking up here around these centers. And I will say a few words about the center I'm more involved with, which is the Center for Artificial Intelligence. We refer to it as C4AI at the University of São Paulo. It's a center funded by the university, FAPESP, which is a support agency for research, and IBM Research. The idea is to carry out fundamental and applied research, seeking breakthroughs in AI. Okay, we have about 100 researchers. Juliano Maranhão is a distinguished fellow in this center. And we have a 10-year research horizon, funding horizon for the center. We have an outreach program. We have seminars. We have had the opportunity to invite leading top researchers, and we have had roundtables, such as the one that we'll have this week on AI centers. Okay. We also have a few research challenges that we are addressing. I will do it very briefly because I suppose I understand this is not really the time, but one thing we're doing is facing tackling problems that Brazil can benefit from. So for example, we're looking at ocean data. Brazil has a large coastal area. We're looking at diagnosis and rehabilitation for stroke. We're looking at decision-making in food networks. Brazil has a lot of food production. And we're looking at public policies in the future of work in emerging countries. And one thing we're doing, and that's the first square that you see, the light green, is trying to make natural language processing in Portuguese stronger. And I think this is really related to things that law tech needs in Brazil. We don't have as many tools for Portuguese as we have for English and for Chinese. And so one thing we need, a collective here in Brazil, academia and industry, is to have to produce more tools for Portuguese. This would be really important and really important for everyone. So I can see a few opportunities in the connection between industry and academia. Data and text processing is one, in particular for us in Portuguese. A second opportunity is to develop together and study together issues of interpretability, explainability, and fair decision-making. We need our devices, artificial devices, to be interpretable and fair. We need to know that they are fair. And also, I think between AI and law, we can find many opportunities for collaboration when we put together data-driven decisions coming from the analysis of documents and data, and knowledge-based reasoning coming from roles that are in the profession, the legal profession. So these are things that we can collaborate in in the connection between industry and academia. Just to finish, I will say that when I think about industry and academia and the public sector, I think that many years ago, I mean, not too many, but maybe 10 years ago, most people in the legal community and collaborated with the AI and law community. And most of what they saw from AI was a bunch of tools. I mean, there were tools that people could use to process data, to process documents, to maybe help a little bit understanding and classifying documents. I think this now has changed. And in fact, AI can benefit from law, from the legal profession as a whole, and from the AI law community, because we in AI, we need to know how to do things ethically. We need to know how to do things in ways that protect privacy and that can support society in the best possible way. So I think to finish is the way the direction we're moving is this. There will be a two-way path between the legal community and the AI law community and the technical AI community. Tools will go from both sides. You know, we from the technical side need the legal knowledge that the legal community has, and I think the legal community can benefit from the tools that the technical AI folks can produce. So that's what I wanted to say. I think the connection between industry and academia and public sector is really strong now, and let's hope the connections bloom and continue growing explosively as they are. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Professor Fabio, for giving us this landscape about the investments in Brazil and our status in this research area, and also for pointing out trends which are important also for the legal community on AI. And I would like now to give room for our sponsors for talks. Just remembering our sponsors for which we are really very grateful for making this conference possible by supporting us. We have JUS Brasil, Albert Einstein Israeli Hospital, Legal Code, PG Advogados, Urbano Vitalino Advogados, Opsi Bloom Advogados, and Logarithm, who is also supporting by providing researchers for hosting and helping all the authors to provide their talks. So I would like now to introduce some representatives of our sponsors. We are now going to give room for them to talk about its own institution and the interest in investments on AI. So I would like first to introduce our platinum sponsors who are going to have 10 minutes for presentation. First of all, I would like to thank and introduce Rafael Costa. He's CEO of JUS Brasil, a important Brazilian law tech, which has a very important and used search engine for which is specific to law. So Rafael Costa, thank you very much for coming and for supporting this conference and this event. You now have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Juliano. So hi, everyone. Great pleasure to be here. So we've been given this space to talk a little bit about our work, our company, and I was wondering a lot. So what could I say here to add to this amazing audience? This is a challenge because I cannot add much in terms of artificial intelligence to so many experts. So I've been thinking about what could I say, and I remembered of we have a lot of talented also researchers and developers in the company, and I thought about what they like to hear from me, and I think this is maybe some perspective that could add something here to all the researchers that will present those, amazing progresses in works that have been done in artificial intelligence connected to law. So the one thing that I notice inside JUS Brazil is that, we work with information retrieval inside the legal field. And for a lot of really bright people inside the company, it's not so obvious and how they can connect to the purpose that we have in the company, which of course, is also comes from their work. It's sometimes hard to connect to the purpose in a pragmatical way. So that's what I thought I could maybe add here to try to bring more clarity in terms of how fundamental and how impactful the research that we are talking about here is, to society. So trying to talk in very simple terms, ultimately what we want to do, in JUS Brazil is to improve justice and improve social capital, in this sense, social trust, through, wide access to highly relevant information. In this case, we are talking mainly about the legal information. And what happens is that I think is difficult to grasp for many engineers and, technological people that are not acquainted to the legal domain, is how, the law is built, and the law is built really through, hundreds of inputs, or maybe thousands of inputs from, of course, thousands of different sources and different people. In this sense, we can think about, all the judges' decisions, which in Portuguese we call jurisprudence. I think in English it might have a different name. All the inputs from the legislation, what is the legislations that exist that tackle this issue, and all the inputs from experts, jurists' opinions, and this is very scattered and unorganized information. So I think the decision maker here and the legal professional, they have this really hard task of making sense of which is ultimately an collective intelligence. And that's where I think that AI comes strongly here, because I think AI is mostly about, is strongly about collective intelligence, making sense of, all those inputs, and in this case, huge amounts of data. And that's the same thing that we have here. And this is the task, for instance, that someone trying to build a legal understanding has to face. So if we think about judges, decisions, we have literally like hundreds of thousands of decisions for the same exact legal issue many times. And trying to bring some clarity for that too. What is a legal issue? It happens basically when two persons are in a conflict of interest, and the judge has this difficult task of saying which is the proper behavior for this conflict of interest situation, and which is the behavior that the state will enforce. And in this case, you have to make sense of, ideally, in terms of decisions, it would be amazing if we could know that in this specific situation, let's say 85.7% of the judges think that way and the others think in that other way. This would be amazing and could give parameters for everyone to have better decision making on top of this collective intelligence. So in JUS Brazil, what we're struggling to do is how to present this, and in Brazil, we're talking about those decisions among 30 billion, different documents. And we are trying to to quickly bring the most important documents that should be read to build an understanding like that. So this is, as you know, a very difficult task, because we're talking only about like natural language, and you all know how difficult it is for the machine to interpret it. But how do we connect that to the purpose of improving justice and social trust? And this is, I think, where the amazing impact comes from. The thing is that if we are able, to actually sort out of those 30 billion documents only in Brazil, the most important ones, to build those legal understandings, then we will add a lot of quality to justice, to how justice is made. So this is the quest that we're pursuing in Just Brazil. We want, all the lawyers from, both parties, everyone, to be honest, and to have access to the best arguments, to the best reasoning regarding any given subject. And if we could provide that, we would be contributing for, judges and anyone, pretty much anyone facing a conflict of interest situations and trying to come up with a solution. But we would provide them with a much better informed, discussion, with much better, legal arguments and legal reasonings. And if that happens, of course, the decisions will have higher quality as well. So ultimately, this is the purpose. This is how we see that we can contribute to a better justice, to better decisions regarding everyone's lives. And in these 30 years, I mean, we're talking about the decisions that actually modulate, our behavior if we abide to the law. And I think, most people do. And I think this is the magic, I think, the great impact that we generate inside the company. And that for me, this is the same impact that all of the research, that is going to be presented here also generates and also is contributing. So this is a little bit of Just Brazil, a little bit of our purpose. I think the great thing here is that we go deep in research as well as everyone here, but we also have this amazing pleasure of being able to actually put those advancements in the hands of society, in the hands of people, and making and contributing to, fully realizing the impact of all of the great things that, all of those amazing researchers are doing. So, and this is the message that I wanted to convey. And I thank everyone very much for having this space, and I'll be here watching all the improvements, and that's it. And if anyone wants to talk a little bit about what we do, it will be a pleasure. Please just get in contact. We, as a team, are very open to, to any ideas or sorts of discussions. It's always a pleasure for us. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Rafael Costa, for bringing the main challenges that you face in developing your business here in Brazil, and also investing in artificial intelligence. As Professor Fabio Cosman said, in the Center for AI, one of the main tenets of the center is to develop NLP in Portuguese. So I'm sure there is connections between the challenges you face and our research aims. So there may be opportunities for joint research and for the development of this technology here in Brazil. Our sponsor of the hospital, Israeli hospital, Albert Einstein, has not joined us yet. So I will move for our gold sponsors. First, I would like to invite Letícia Tavares Málaga from the Legal Code, also Law Tech in Brazil, to talk about her institution and her experience in this field. So please, Leticia Tavares Malaga, you have the floor. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Juliano. Hello for everyone. It's a huge honor for us from Legal Code to be here today joining ICAO 2021, such an important international conference, bringing this amazing team for a week of great discussions related to AI and law and how it's bringing new perspectives to legal market. So first of all, we'd like to thank you all to ICAO organization and the opportunity and also the audience for being here today with us. For sure, it's an important step for Brazil hosting this conference. I'm Leticia Malaga, speaking from São Paulo. I'm lawyer and founder of Legal Code and an enthusiastic of innovation and technology for the legal market, and how we all can benefit from this new digital world and the way we work and deliver services to our clients and to the society. So talking about the Brazil environment for investors and technology, we can say that we are evolving in regulation aspects, considering that we just had AI strategy released from the government and the Startups Act approved, bringing the investors more safety, promoting new business models by permitting regulatory sandbox, and simplifying corporate procedures. And for sure, it reflects in the whole technology industry. So we have these new steps just released. And we should say also that that we can see signs, concrete signs in the legal market that we are entering a new phase of maturity. So this week we'll have the possibility with these discussions and what are the next steps, not only in Brazil, but what's happening all around the world. So, and how legal code can help this revolution. So considering that we have around 8 million of lawsuits in Brazil and open data, we saw a huge opportunity to create a tool to help lawyers and talking about this solution. It's a technology company that uses advanced automation techniques and artificial intelligence to digitalize legal services. So we have a proprietary technology and expertise built by participating large projects over many years. So Legal Code is the pioneer in applying innovative hyper-automation concepts in an end-to-end environment in Brazil, not only for lawyers and legal departments, but also law firms. So our technology integrates the reading of documents, registration, search of data, and also information from different sources to generate risk metrics and support in document creation. So all this supervised by legal professionals and according to the content always provided by the lawyers. So our goal is to decrease time required in repetitive activities, delivering tangible gains in quality, efficiency, and also financial returns. So we are always looking for new techniques and developing our techniques of intelligence, artificial intelligence. That's why we think it's very important to be here discussing all these aspects with you all. So I invite you all to visit our website and to know better our solution. And it's a pleasure to be here exchanging our knowledge and more having more experience with you all. So thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you very much, Leticia, for bringing your experience in this field as a law tech. And we have seen the perspectives of two law techs who invests in artificial intelligence for applications in the legal domain. And we may see now the perspective of a law firm. We will have then Patricia Peck representing PG Advogados. Patricia, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Juliano. Well, first, I'd like to thank the organization for the invitation, the opportunity to share some of my insights, but a complementary point of view, considering what everyone has said. And for me, it's a great pleasure to be here in this morning, and also to talk a little about our experience, because we have been giving some legal assistance considering IP necessities of AI projects for several clients here in Brazil that also needs some assistance considering privacy risk and cybersecurity risk. As Minister Barroso has said, we are living in a new world, a new digital and robotic society. And of course, that's a little, bring us we are a little scared of having this smart society like that machines know so much about us human beings, and they also become like testimonies, and they already make decisions. So of course, in a legal point of view, we think about regulations as I believe Rafael have said and Leticia have said as well, and we have this all Fabio have said what we've been doing here in Brazil. But actually, we could not have improved so much artificial intelligence for a smart society if we have accomplished in the last 20 years access to data, especially to personal data, and lots of data. So we are living in this data society. And Brazil is a huge market for AI opportunities, of course. But considering that, I think that we should be reflecting on how we should approach to stimulate more innovation on an AI society. Because of course, we can have on one side, the open data society approach. And there are a lot of experts talking about that. Even when we think about the data that's in the public administration domain, how we can stimulate that. Justice data, of course, when we have a lot of data in the public sector as well. But on the other hand, we have this recent data protection regulations approach that brings the importance of protecting privacy. And I'm not saying that's not important, but it brings also limits and restrictions and some costs for startups sector. It's very difficult to leverage and to reach this kind of regulation, So for the next years, what's going to be the public policy to stimulate innovation in AI projects if you consider the premises that you need to access data to develop this kind of project. Also, I'd like to share, a thought here with you all, that in 22 years of work of law and technology here in Brazil, I also have studied a lot, and for me, internet has an international nature. And I know that Juliano Maranhão, that you also share this kind of thought as well, because this international environment of internet, it challenged us for developing national regulations. And I still so far think that maybe an international treaty would be better off when we think about this kind of topics. And WTO or UNESCO or maybe other institution should be leading this. And here in Brazil, we so far have like 3 bills being discussed about AI regulation. That's Bill 5051 from 2019, 5691 from 2019, and the 2020. And there are 3 bills trying to figure out how to regulate AI here in Brazil, and they might, be approved in 2021 or 2022, and it's going to establish for the industry, the local industry, a regulation locally, but we should think that AI has an international approach. What are developing Canada, United States, Europe, Asia, what's China doing, So I really believe that the international treaty on this topic would be something that Brazil should be sitting on these round tables abroad and discussing about. So just to conclude, we have several challenges to overcome. We should balance AI innovation and data protection regulations, because if you go too much for one side, maybe we're not protecting privacy and cybersecurity enough. But to the other hand, if you go too much restriction, we cannot access data the way we should to develop AI projects. How attend principles such as algorithm transparency. I really think that transparency is the key word for AI, transparency, and no discrimination personal data processing. And that's what we are seeing on facial recognition projects. That's something that they are struggling a lot. And how to establish clear rules to sharing data between private sector and public administration when there is economic exploitation. We should guarantee the access to it and not shutting doors for the next years, because it's going to be very complicated, or there is a prejudice for the society in an overall point of view. So that's it. I have just 5 minutes, and I hope I could contribute for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia. And it was nice to have this perspective of law regarding artificial intelligence. We had Rafael and Leticia saying here some words about the application of AI to law. And now we have discussed a little bit the other way around, which is the law of AI, or the AI law. And it's interesting to hear that there are already some repercussion of AI already to law here in Brazil. And particularly, there are legal implications of AI and also ethical implications of AI, which are the Brazilians are already facing. And the law firms will certainly be requested to handle all these problems, which are already present, but they are surely going to increase and to come. Before we close the section, I would like to say some words about a Logarithm. Logarithm is a non-profit research association which was created by myself as a professor of law at University of São Paulo, together with colleagues of the School of Engineering of the University of São Paulo, among them Professor Fabio Cosman, and professors from the University of the Department of Computer Science of the University of São Paulo. And Logarithm, as a research association, is focused in two main tenets. The first of them is related to the application of artificial intelligence to the law or to the legal practice. And within this field, we try to connect the research in academics to initiatives of investment by law techs or by companies or by legal firms on AI. So our objective is to improve the quality of these investments by developing new technology. And on the other hand, we are also in the other front we are interested in participation and engaging ourselves in the public debate. As Patricia has mentioned, there are proposals of bills on regulation of AI, and we would like to, within this institution, try to inform those discussions, those public, the formulation of those public policies with our background knowledge on the field, not by an interdisciplinary team discussing matters of ethics and legal implications of AI. So I would also like to thank all the researchers by the logarithm who are in the past months engaged in supporting and working for the organization of this conference. So first, I would like to thank all these researchers who are engaging and helping me a lot in the organization of this conference. And I would like to thank particularly the local organizing community, Aline Macoin, Renata Wasserman, Alexandre Zavalha, Marcelo Lopes, and Roberto Bornhausen, who are making also this conference possible by working hard in the arrangements of this conference. And now, our sponsor from Hospital Albert Einstein has joined us. So I would like to invite Dr. Edson Amaro to give us a bit of insight and talk a little bit about the institution he represents. Thank you very much, Dr. Edson Amaro. You have the floor now. had a little technical problem here, but now we are ready to continue. I would like to introduce Dr. Edson Amaro, representing the Hospital Albert Einstein. Dr. Edson Amaro, you have the floor now. Thank you very much for joining and for supporting our conference.
Okay, thanks very much. It's a privilege to talk about the hospital. Albert Einstein is a hospital, but more than a hospital. In recent years, we've been expanding our activities. It's considered one of the best hospitals according to the Newsweek ranking. And at the moment, we are organized in a way that we provide health assistance, education and research, and innovation. And this is according to a proposal that has been devised a long time ago, almost 50 years. And through the years, Brazil has been experiencing the activity of this hospital in many different areas, most of the time as a pioneer. In regard to our social responsibility, we've been engaging in many programs together with the government and with the other partners in the private sectors. And this is actually the numbers, I'm sorry it's in Portuguese, but this is the amount of investment that we've been working in programs related to the improvement of health. And this is, again, not only related to our activity, but also in the society as a whole. So I would bring the attention for a few areas that we've been working with technology. And in those areas, I'm going to highlight a few of those areas in the following examples. So just to give a broad perspective, activities that we do in the hospital are not related to those that have access to the hospital, but in programs related to our social responsibility and renovation. So the majority of people that are taken care by our professionals are now those that are not related to the small percentage of the population that can afford access to private sector. This is actually an overview of my example. So in terms of hospital beds, the private part of the hospital takes care of 626, whereas the public health, it's 775. The number of days in the hospital is, of course, is relevant. And this is related also to the complexity. The satisfaction from the patients actually is higher in the public sector. And also in terms of total number of exams, we perform more than 3 million exams per year last year in the hospital. I have just to highlight one point that we work actively in the COVID pandemics, building a hospital in the city of São Paulo with 200 beds. Another numbers, just to give you another example, in terms of emergency room, we have more than double the number of patients that we take care of in the public sector. The number of consultancy and telemedicine, and also the rate of occupation is actually very efficient in both hospitals of both private sector and public sector. So now going to the more specific technology, the way we organize our data, we've been working in big data since 6 years ago. We have these 3 dimensions. All of them are centered in the subject. So we have data pertaining to the omics sector, so biology. For instance, we have data that we collected in research in epidemiology-based sample with whole genome analysis that is also available for research. And also we've been working on the ambient data that contains information provided by the subjects, again, following all the regulations in place. That belongs to the behavior sector. In other words, how people make decisions is simply implemented in our data lake system. And these are data that we use to propose of bringing data culture to our institution and to our partners abroad. So I'm going to show you via examples some of the ideas that we implemented using a concept of hub and spoke. So it's not like a client base. We teach people through the use of big data analytics. We have been doing some analytics that's based on prescriptive and predictive analytics, and also content-based image retrieval. So the overall view is that we have to generate value to the society based on the journey that one has to follow when implementing solutions based on data. So data as an asset But through analytics and AI, we can achieve the value. And through the process, we generate knowledge, and we also provide a global connection in the process. So the examples I'm going to give you is a set of 3 examples within a hospital and 3 examples outside the hospitals. One is more predictive and prescriptive analytics. The other one is predictive analytics. The first example, which is a kind of routine, when you go to a surgery, the surgeons, they have to use a lot of instruments that have been either sterilized or produced uniquely for that moment. So we have this amount of complexity and instrumentation used for a particular surgery. So we took the data from more than 240,000 surgical procedures, comprising around 6 million instruments, and we use an algorithm to optimize what's the best combination of instruments for each particular surgery for each particular type of patient. So we're using that intelligent solution, we were able to reduce the cost of the procedure in a certain case up to 32%. And this was based on 3-year operation system. And this solution actually is actionable because the ones that are managing the system can select what's the best optimization method for each day. In other words, you have a kind of seasonal movement in the hospital, and this system can actually adapt to what's the best solution for a particular day. The second example is based on images, medical images. The hospital has around 1.2 petabytes of data only solely based on images from patients. So what we did here was to select a method using AI that could identify one part of the aorta and measure this organ in all images performed in our institution. In other words, we have the database that can provide a search-based, content-based search engine, which is similar to what people are now using when they have photographs in their mobile phones. But the question here is whether this patient has a lesion or an anatomical feature that can be similar to what other patient in our, 2.9 million patients in our database. Those patients that were treated, they provide a memory of the medical condition that can be assessed in a way that is easy when you do these elements for search and retrieve the data. Another example is to predict who is going to come back to the hospital after a discharge in less than 30 days. This is a kind of well-known algorithm for prediction of readmissions, and we have implemented that back in 2016. That helps doctors to evaluate what's the best care for each patient. So this is individual prediction for readmission. And what you see here in the bottom line is the performance of the algorithms across 90 days. And in a daily basis, you see that certain dates, we are 100% correct. In a certain dates, we are less than that. On average, 87% of accuracy was achieved. So these are the 3 examples I gave. Now I'm looking at the population because I think it's more relevant to overall context in the society. One first example is prediction of metabolic syndrome. Metabolic syndrome, as you might know, it's a condition that actually is associated with one of the major causes of death. So metabolic syndrome is a condition that actually predisposes the subject to develop cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, and even cancer. So the amount of resources that the public system allocates to treat those patients, it's enormous. And of course, the consequences of not treating these people, it's even worse. So the idea here is to build an algorithm that can predict whether a patient has a higher chance to develop metabolic syndrome. We use that based on AI. We use a combination of 28 different network systems. And this is just an example whether you can look at patient's history and see this in this column, the prediction of particular variable, in this case, abdominal circumferences, their arterial pressure and other measures. And this is the accuracy of the model for each of those predictions. So this guides the doctors to tell the patients, and of course, this system is not 100% correct, so he has to deal with that. Another example is the cost population management. This is an example that's a geo-reference-based system in which we look at where are the people that needs more assistance. And of course, we also want to simulate what would be the solution if we add more nurses or doctors to the system. This is seen on the right, where we can work on predictive simulation. So this is a condition in which we simulate based on real data what could be the effects and cost effectiveness of adoption of new systems in the city of São Paulo. This example was done in combination with the mayor of São Paulo. So the city of São Paulo, the largest city in Latin America, as you might know, has a programs that in which we work in combination. We take care of around 300,000 people. We manage the hospital and basic care units. And here we did a project on predictive analytics, trying to look at what would be the number of consultations per patients with hypertension and diabetes. In other words, we try to predict how often these patients will see a doctor, and if we can optimize these methods in order to make sure that the team is available for them when they need it. More than that, we want to keep these people in their homes in better healthcare other than just going to the hospital, which is much more costly. And of course, it's not the best situation for them. In other words, avoid complications. So we did a model that could predict with the accuracy of 0.88. One is the best accuracy. Whether they would go up to one consultation per year, between 2 and 5, and more than 5. So we can identify the overusers and the underusers according to the prescriptions. More importantly, we did this in combination with the population and in combination with the healthcare workers that are attending the population directly. So we went there. These are scientists from our team going and visit them in these units in the city of São Paulo, this outskirts of São Paulo. So one interesting point here is that we could predict the frequency, but what they wanted to know in reality is when is the best date for consultation? So a very practical, simple question. When should I schedule the appointment? That can be done using predictive analytics in order to get those that need more often to the doctors. So the last example I'm going to give you was a project that we made in the last 2.5 years with the federal government. And this was a big data analytics that was following the plan for digital health in Brazil. So the idea that we did here was to look at different contexts in Brazil and provide different solutions. There are many examples. We provided an index of geo-referenced socioeconomic risk for Brazil. We also tested technology based on social media network that is available. And we have a few publications in place and some that are still going to be sent. But basically, what we did here is to try to show to the government, in combination with the teams of the government, those that are working in the units at the basic care level, at the primary care level, in order to see whether they can adopt solutions, what are the barriers for digital literacy, and the solutions that we could provide, I hope, can help the government to reduce the inequalities that we see in our country. Thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Edson, and thank you for your inputs. And of course, as an institution that invests massively and intensively on AI, there is a concern about legal responsibility and the ethical application of these systems. So I thank you very much for supporting the conference, as it will stimulate much debate on specifically the subject within this conference as responsibility of AI. We have papers discussing that, and the ethics of AI, particularly explainability, as discussed, which is discussed not only in the main conference that starts tomorrow, but also at the workshops. So thank you very much. I'd like to finally thank again our sponsors, JUS Brasil, Albert Einstein Israeli Hospital, Legal Code, PG Advogados, Urbano Vitalino Advogados, and Opsi Bloom Advogados for supporting the conference. I'm very happy and honored to host in the name of the University of São Paulo Law School this conference. And I would like to thank again all the team of researchers of Logarithm for helping me to organize this event. Thank you very much. I will now close this section and invite you all to the workshops. And for tomorrow, starting at 9 o'clock GMT, invite you all to join and participate in our conference. Thank you very much. See you at the workshops and at the main conference tomorrow. Thank you.